ask everyone to please rise for our national anthem.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets right glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attendance. This high school is really at the cusp of something really important. Recognize it or not, I'm not even sure if your principal recognizes this. This is the first of its kind. We are the first state to offer forums. You're the first school in the first state. You, as 18 and younger, actually have now more influence over who becomes Connecticut's next governor than anyone else on the state of Connecticut. How do you have that influence? Well, for good and for good. For both reasons, these cards, which our rules maker will explain a little bit more on the candidate side, but I'll start with you, the students. You have, as your principal said, the power to quietly, no hissing, no booing, we don't want that, but you can express yourselves to the cameras and importantly to the candidates. They're starting off on a year-long journey that they could use the feedback of those of you who will be voters in the next 11, 13 months. So your respectful raising of cards is really helpful. On the candidate side, their respectful raising of hands when they want to participate and answer a question. But if they don't want to, it's no disparagement. All the candidates have an equal amount of time. We initially were going to go with a block of only 13 minutes. We're down one candidate, so we're going to expand and give every candidate 16 minutes. We're going to get 16 minutes. Moderators' questions are meant to be brief, they're meant to be open, and that means the candidates will signal whether they want to respond or not by raising their hand. The moderators will then take in order of hands raised. If a candidate doesn't want to respond orally, that's where they all have a visual. They too can raise the red card to say, I disagree. The green card to say, I do agree, and for those complex issues where they might be ambivalent, they have that as well. So, I will now introduce the people who I think are so important to this debate. Who are they? The students first, you guys. And thank you, Kyle Sullivan, George Bloom, Nate Larson. Amanda Bull, our timer. Rochelle Peterson, running the AV. Dr. Dowling, our humanities coordinator, all the timers and the ushers here. They've really made this event possible in a really sophisticated way. This is better than I could have expected. The candidates who are not here don't know what they're missing. They'll find out later, thanks to Channel 8 and Mr. McDonald. Let me introduce the candidates for governor of this state in order of when they committed to you. I bring you Ms. Lee Whitnum, Mr. Micah Welintukonis. Mr. Dave Walker. And Dr. Prasad Srinivasan. So, that will hopefully be the last time I need to use last names because, one, they're hard to pronounce. And two, they've all agreed to be on a first name basis. Okay, so that's how they will be addressed. The only time you might hear a last name would be if, against protocol, somebody is speaking rudely over another, and then that is where Mr. Nate Larson has a say. He'd like to now introduce the rules for timing.
Candidates, each of you will have 16 minutes total to answer any of the questions you would field. If you see a yellow card flashed by your timekeeper in front of you, you will have 6 minutes left of the 13. If you see an orange card, you have 2 minutes left. And when you see a red card, there are 40 seconds left. After that, your timekeeper will raise your hand, and they will cut the mics. You have 13 minutes total. Good luck. No, 16, my bad.
The first question is, the achievement
gap. So the questions have been exposed to the candidates. It's not impromptu, but in a way that helps them be at their best. The questions have been composed exclusively by your classmates. They will be asked in order, just a round robin of moderators will go alphabetically. It'll be George, Kyle, Scott. All the candidates have the chance again to raise their hands if they want to, and if they don't, they can stay silent because their time gets run against them. Literally, when the time is up after 16 minutes, they are not allowed to speak. Okay? So they will have from our timekeepers up here a warning. They will have 6-minute warning. That'll be, and you'll be able to see because each of them has a timekeeper corresponding to where they are. They will have the 6-minute warning, the 2-minute warning, and the 40-second warning. I'm an SAT teacher. These are increments of triples, okay? Get ready. After that 40 seconds is up, you will hear time. The one thing these timers might say, they have to finish their sentence. They're done. They can still signal their approvals and disapprovals. That's fine, but they're not allowed to speak to the end. I know a lot of these candidates are happy to greet you guys at the end, but we are now going to turn it over to the moderators and the candidates. Thank you all. I'd like to turn this over now to first moderator, George Bloom.
The achievement gap is the difference in academic performance between Connecticut's low-income and minority students and their peers. Connecticut has one of the worst gaps in the country, largely because our low-income students perform in the bottom third of our nation. What would you do to solve this issue? Prasad.
Thank you. We have a system, the educational cost sharing system. As you know, on an annual basis, we spend almost $2 billion into education in the state. But what has gone wrong with the formula is it is no longer a formula, it is just a block grant, as you know. And there is no transparency. So the two things that have to be done to address the big issue, the big concern that you just now raised, is we got to make sure we revisit the formula and stick to that formula. So there's no political component at all. You have a formula. Stratford is going to get what it should get. Glastonbury, my town, will get what it gets. That's the first thing I would do. The second thing is all the schools are supposed to report back. There's supposed to be transparency as far as this funding is concerned, how schools spend that money in a uniform way. There is a public act. We are supposed to do that. But guess what? We are not doing that. And I would make sure the Public Act 12-116, which is there in the books, needs to be instituted, needs to be followed. Those would be the two changes I would make.
David.
It's good to be back in high school. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it very much. Connecticut is a land of disparity. Connecticut has some of the wealthiest people in the country and some of the poorest people in the country. Connecticut has some of the best schools in the country and some of the worst schools in the country. I live in Bridgeport, Connecticut, right next door. So I can tell you from the front line what the situation is in Bridgeport. We have an education funding formula that is discriminatory. It does not result in equal opportunity for education in this state. The court has already said that. We have to revise that formula in order to provide equal opportunity. You can't provide equal result. I'm pleased to say that my wife, Mary, who we've been married since college, is a substitute teacher in the Fairfield schools, and so I have an educator who's right in my home. We need choice, we need competition, we need more transparency, we need more accountability. We need to help students that are challenged and don't get the help at home to provide additional tutoring for them. And in addition to that, we need to spend much less money on infrastructure and more money on things that actually will result in economic achievement. Last thing, we have way too many school districts in this state. Everybody has their own overhead. They're not sharing services. It costs us a lot more money, and it harms our ability to deliver a quality education.
Lee.
I was an educator for many years, and I'm still an educator. The single most important factor on whether a child is going to learn is not how much money. I remember when I did my graduate thesis when I was at Harvard at the Graduate School of Education, I went to the Buckingham Brown Nichols School, which was a school that had more facilities, computers, everything you could possibly imagine, sports equipment. And then I contrasted that with a public school and a Catholic school. At the end of the day, the Catholic school came up the best based on the factors that my partner and I determined. Because you don't always, throwing money at a school, Greenwich has a ton of money. Maybe Bridgeport has a lot less. It doesn't mean you can't have a good educational experience. In my opinion, as an educator, the student-teacher ratio is the number one factor. You can't overdo it with paraprofessionals. You can't overdo it with a Montessori method where older students take younger students, breaking into small groups. Changing the way we do it and concentrating on individualized education is really, really important. Sometimes it's a matter of changing the philosophy on how we approach education.
Micah.
So basically what I want to know, I just want feedback from you guys. What sucks? What sucks in your school? Right?
Please settle down.
I'm being timed here, so hold on. Because I graduated high school back in the dinosaur age of 1994, before most of you guys were born. I need to get feedback from you guys and know what needs to be changed. I need feedback from more teachers. That's what I would like to do.
Thank you, Micah.
Students, could you please use your cards to express your opinions? Thank you.
What's that? Oh, thanks. Next question. Okay. Next question. Currently, all 11th graders have to take the SAT as part of Connecticut's Education Accountability Plan. The scores are then used to rate our schools on educational progress and closing the achievement gap. Do you think the SAT is an accurate assessment of what we learn in school? Do you think our schools should be used to evaluate schools? Do you think our scores should be used to evaluate schools or their teachers? Prasad.
Students, please use your cards to express your opinions. Thank you.
Thank you. The key word you used is accurate assessment, and that it does not do. Do the SAT scores give you an idea, give you an assessment? The answer is fair. That's reasonable. But is it accurate? The answer is absolutely no. We've got to come up with another way in which we evaluate our students. We do not teach.
Students, please refrain from talking and use your cards to express your opinions. Thank you.
We do not teach to the test. We want to teach students so when they come out of a high school education, they are decent skills equipped for them to deal what they're going to deal with in the outside world. So to teach to a test is a wrong way to continue education. That has to change.
Dave.
We need to be able to match resources to results. The fact is we spend 2.5 times per person what other major industrialized nations do on K through 12 education, and we get below average results. The SAT is flawed. You should not rely upon one measure in order to assess potential. I know people who did better than me on the SAT who in life did not do as well as I did. I had some fortunate opportunities. I know people who did worse than me and didn't even go to college and are billionaires today. So let's recognize that reality.
Lee.
How are you going to judge someone's ability? Did they come to school? Did they take the 10, 15, maybe an hour a night to look at their algebra book, to look at any of their work? Did they do anything? Are they sitting around with their friends smoking reefer? I mean, how are you going to assess people? You have to have testing. How do I know that when I go, excuse me, I was a teenager once too. I know what goes on. How do you know when somebody applies for a job, how do you know to choose them over the next person? They say, I graduated from high school and I had good grades. Versus someone who said, well, I dropped out, I didn't want to do that. I'm going to hire the person who graduated from high school, who cracked the book at night, who did a little work. We need to have a way to test your ability. You have to. How else are you going to know where you stand? How else will employers know where you stand? Are there other ways? Do we judge people just by testing? Absolutely not. There's all kinds of examples. But the problem is this. You might become a billionaire if that's what you're gauging success by, or you might be the nicest person on the block that all your neighbors love you. It's not always about the money. At your young age, you're young. They have to have some way. You've got no track record to gauge you by. They have to have some way to measure where your head is. Are you studious? Do you care about the future? It matters.
Micah.
I agree with Dave and Prasad. We need a combination. We need to develop new ways. You can't just rely on one thing to determine something.
What are your views on Common Core, and what is your course of action in either aiding or removing it? Prasad.
When we look at Common Core and its origin and how we as a state took upon ourselves to be a part of the core team and have Common Core back in 2010, that's when we did that. And we did that for a reason. We wanted to make sure that math, science, basic skills were at a certain level as far as schools across the board were concerned. So in theory, in principle, Common Core is extremely laudable. It is the right thing to do. The harsh reality is, how do districts, individual districts, implement the Common Core? That's where the difficulty comes, because when you look at curriculum and you've got to constantly update that, when you look at teacher education and you have to constantly do that, it costs a ton of money. And that money, unfortunately, we do not have. So in theory, it is what we need, absolutely, no question about that in my mind. But unfortunately, the rollout and the follow through at the state level is not happening. We need a better system to implement our Common Core.
Micah.
Each and every single one of you are individual learners. Why should you have one thing shoved down your throats that you have to stand there and put up with it? I'm a hands-on type of learner. I like to learn hands-on, and I've been very successful in my military career, and that's how I learn. So what works for me might not work for Dave, or might not work for somebody else. But Common Core might work for somebody and some individuals. But I think we need other forms of ways of learning, and you can still graduate and move on in life.
Dave.
The intent of Common Core was positive, and that is to try to come up with a way to measure performance in a way that you could provide comparability across school districts and across the nation. But it is flawed. It needs to be revised. The fact is, it also is based upon a false presumption. It's based upon a false presumption that everybody is going to college. The fact is that that is a false presumption. People have different interests, different abilities, and we need to do a better job, like many countries do, such as Germany, in trying to match an individual's interests and abilities with the needs of the economy, such that we can provide the kinds of training that they have to allow them to be successful in life and to achieve their full potential without being dependent on society. In addition to that, we need to recognize that people have different learning styles. One last thing. There are two things that we are doing a lousy job of in our school system that is costing our society. Number one, we are not teaching financial literacy for people to understand how to handle your personal finances. Let me tell you this. Do not follow the bad example of the government. They're irresponsible with regard. And number two.
Students, please use your cards to express your opinions. Thank you.
Number two, civic responsibility. Your responsibility of a citizen of this great nation, how the system works, how you can make a difference in the system. That's critically important, because Washington and Hartford are out of touch and out of control, and we need to take it back.
Students, please use your cards to express your opinions. Thank you.
Many of the students in this auditorium are thinking about going to college, but are turned away by the enormous price tag associated with a degree. What would you do to minimize the financial burden of college so that education is more available to students around Connecticut? Joe.
How do you start? I don't have to start, but I want to participate anyway, so if someone else wants to go first, go ahead. Okay?
I wanted to comment to what he just said. Are we allowed to comment to what he just said? May I?
You may.
Could I 1 minute? You're tracking kids at a young age. This sounds like a little bit too much like the Soviet Union. I've had friends from Denmark and other places where...
Students, please use your cards to express your opinions. Thank you.
I don't understand why you're bullied. High school curriculums, I mean, would you like somebody to tell you from the 7th grade or the 6th grade, this is your aptitude, this is your ability, this is what you're going to be? You want a high school that has enough classes where you can explore. who you are now will change drastically between now and 20, and if you're a woman in this culture, between 20 and 25, what you want. After that, your personality tends to solidify. You're going to change a lot. You may become a different person than you were in the 7th grade. Do you want some bureaucrat to tell you what your ability is and where you should be? People have defied that so many times. Did you know the man with the highest IQ in the world, 186 IQ, is a janitor? By choice, because he said he didn't want his IQ exploited for capitalistic gain. Is he a loser? Maybe he's very happy. There's no indication, but you definitely don't want what he just said, that you get tracked and they tell you what your ability is and what you should be. Screw that. You determine it. You make your own decisions.
Dave.
Dave.
I've been to the Soviet Union, and this country is nothing like the Soviet Union. This is the greatest country on earth. Don't let anybody tell you.
I wasn't
Look,
talking about
the
comparing
bottom line is,
countries.
pardon me.
That's
I didn't interrupt you. You don't interrupt me.
You know something?
Pardon me. Excuse
Folks,
me.
if you
Can we
are
regain
chiming
control?
in, this won't count against you.
I'm not
If you are
talking
chiming
about
in,
the Soviet Union.
you're
done.
counting
as a whole
time against.
country.
I didn't interrupt you, and you don't interrupt me. Here's the bottom line. Look, there's actually one area that we actually agree on.
I'm talking about tracking.
Excuse me.
Tracking. They do it in a lot of countries.
Miss Whitnum, can you please refrain from talking so that Mr. Walker can finish his answer? Thank you.
There's one area where we agree on, and that is you.
Students, on green, your cards and voices count against your candidates' times. In order to help them, please remain quiet. Thank you.
There's one area where we agree on. You should have a direct say about what you want to do in life.
Of course. Absolutely, but that's not what you said before. For the record, I was not comparing the United States to the Soviet Union, all aspects of it. I was talking about tracking and being tracked, and he was the one who brought that up. I would never propose that. We'll go back on the tape and look at it. Excuse me, can I ask you a question? It seems like he can say nothing wrong and I can say nothing right. Why is that?
Students, on a green card, your voice counts against your candidate's time. Please refrain from talking in order to help them. Thank you.
We're going to move to the next question now.
Okay, let's try this one. Everyone gets $1 million. Hold up your red. I said it. You got to hold up your red. I said it. Come on, you hate me. Hold up your red. Hold it up. Yay!
We're going to move to the next question now.
Students, we need you to be quiet in order to ask the next question. Thank you.
You want to know something?
We're going to move to the next question now.
All right, forget it.
Many of the students in this auditorium are thinking about going to college, but are turned away. Thank you. Many of the students in this auditorium are thinking about going to college, but are turned away by the enormous price tag associated with a degree. What would you do to minimize the financial burden of college so that education is more available to students around Connecticut? Prasad?
Education, higher education, whether it's a 4-year college degree or you're going to vocational education. That's the choice that all of you have. And this nation, the proudest nation on the face of the universe, has to give you that opportunity, an opportunity that was given to me by this wonderful nation. I'm a first-generation immigrant, landed at Kennedy Airport 1975 with $7.50 in my pocket. It is with the education that I got, with the training that I got, the higher education that I got in this beautiful nation that has given me the opportunity to stand before you this afternoon seeking the highest office in our state. And for me, the passion is, the drive is, each and every one of you, I hope, have more than $7.50 in your pocket, but each and every one of you has the same opportunity that I have had. And so for me, getting on to higher education is something very, very emotional, very passionate. And we got to look at the cost and make it in such a way that it is affordable. We've got to break down the cost to what is administration and what directly goes towards student education. The layers and layers of money that is spent on administration, you can imagine, is something that we need to tighten our belts so that at the end of the day, you, the future students in our higher education, have the right opportunity and don't have to go broke by the time you finish your college. I would also look, I would definitely look, a hard look at the universities that have huge endowment funds. And how do they use the endowment funds is something all of us should be looking at. That money is not for administrative reasons alone. That's not for new buildings alone. It is for you, the students. And that endowment money, every school should be using it so your cost is not what it should be, and it is you leave college not with the huge loans that we see these days.
Joe.
I don't know who picks.
Joe.
Can I? Let me say thanks, and my apologies for being the last one up on stage. Quick show of hands. How many here have plans, ideas to go on to college? Okay. How many have plans and ideas on how you're going to pay for college? How many think you have money saved or saved money parents are going to pay? Anybody know? I mean, these are real questions coming up in your life. Student loans? Student loans? I ask that because, and by the way, I think you know I'm mayor of Bridgeport, and it's the largest school district in the state. There's some 23,000 students speaking some 60-something languages in the Bridgeport schools. But it's only one district in the state, Stratford is, and so many others. And I got to believe there's thousands upon thousands that are hopefully asking themselves the same question you're asking. One, am I going to go on to college? And two, can I afford it? And it's a challenge for anybody in Connecticut right now. We don't have free college tuition in Connecticut. How many here think we should? Show of hands. Just to be competitive with what New York's doing and some of the other states, right? Shouldn't the fundamental right to education extend beyond high school? Does anybody agree with me? So that's great. Joe said, oh, he wants to do free college tuition, maybe. Thinks we should all have a good. How do we get there? It's not free. Our professors, our teachers, our administrators, the buildings are all expensive, and they deserve the best that we can provide them and pay. So I'm backing into, these are things that I think are probably the most important singular group of items or issues or challenges for us, whether it's the Bunnell High School in Stratford, whether it's Harding High School in Bridgeport, or anywhere in Connecticut. And whoever thinks they're going to run the state of Connecticut for the next 4 years better have some answers. Better recognize that this state is in fiscal crisis, and that we're at a point where this school district, because I know your state representative who's fighting up there, could face losing money with teachers being laid off, just like the schools in Bridgeport could very soon. And we've got to solve this problem because you, the students, the young people, as everybody in Connecticut, needs to have an answer so you can have certainty about your future. I essentially believe this is the central core issue, not just because I'm at Bassick High School with a couple hundred students who are thinking about the future, but everywhere in Connecticut, that this is the singular issue that we need to focus on. I've tried to do it with lawsuits against whoever we could as school districts to say there's a constitutional, that's the highest law in the state of Connecticut, a constitutional right to the best quality public education no matter where you go. That means you at Bassick High School in every city and town. And I do believe, although it's not a constitutional right, we should make it an element of a future for a better for Connecticut, that you're able to afford to go to college or to have to wrap yourselves or your families with hundreds of thousands of dollars of future debt obligations. So that's my quick introduction to say hello. On that front, we're on the same page. We may agree or disagree with some of the other candidates, but I want to introduce myself and say thank you for having me.
Dave.
My family immigrated to this country in 1680, and yet I am only the second person in my direct line to graduate from college. Understand that education and training is key to success in America. It may be college, undergraduate, it may be master's, it may be a trade school, whatever, but it is absolutely key. You need to decide what you want to do and go about it. With regard to the question, which is the affordability of college education, it is way too expensive. And one of the ways it's way too expensive is because there's way too much overhead. There's way too many buildings. There's way too many things that do not result in a quality education. The fact is there's huge waste and abuse in our higher education system. Furthermore, I've got a son and a daughter. They're fortunate. They both graduated from college. My son and my daughter-in-law both got a master's degree online from the University of Phoenix. We need to leverage technology to a much greater extent than we are right now, which by definition can drive down significantly the cost of education. We need to make sure that endowments are focused on providing student aid, not building buildings that we don't need. By the way, we're building way too many schools that we don't need to, with a declining school population, and the simple fact of the matter is the state is broke. I'd love to say that we can give you stuff for free. There's no free lunch, and the state is broke. I did used to live in Georgia, and we had something called the Hope Scholarship. And what that was that for people that achieved a certain degree of academic performance from any high school in the state, they were given a scholarship to go to a state school for free, and that was done with the lottery money. What do we do with the lottery money? We use it for general spending, not for a positive purpose, and look where we are. Terrible.
Micah.
Anybody here know how much the President of the United States salary is? Yeah. You raising your hand. How much is it? $50,000. A year? The President of the United States, how much is his salary? You right here. Who said 400,000? Where are you? Why don't you stand up, young man?
Students, please refrain from talking during your candidate's time, as they lose time when you talk.
All right,
Thank you.
let me talk. I'm not too bad, right, for a guy running for governor. It went right in your hands. So, the President of the United States makes $400,000 a year. Do you know what the President of Yukon makes a year? Double that salary. Double. President Obama's chief of staff made $172,000 a year. President Trump's is at roughly $176,000 a year. The chief of staff at Yukon is over $255,000 a year. Did you guys read my background? Did they give that to you? So I'm a retired Army guy. I've served in Kosovo, Iraq, and Afghanistan. I was shot and I took a direct hit from a suicide bomber that landed me in a coma for 2 weeks. I had to be resuscitated twice. So I'm going to tell you this. Nobody out there is going to fight corruption harder than I will. And I guarantee you that. And I'm going to go after all these fat salaries. And what we're going to do, we are going to put a tuition freeze in place. This state of Connecticut is $100 billion in debt. I've spent the last 9 months digging into the state financials. It's $100 billion in debt. Nobody's talking about that. Anybody talking about giving you free crap is full of crap.
Students, if you're going to use your green cards, please do not talk as it uses the candidate's time. Thank you.
I am not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what I think is honestly possible, and I think I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. How many of you knew the state was that far in debt? Do you know what we paid towards debt last fiscal year? In 1 year, we paid $2.2 billion. Do you know what we borrowed last year? Over $3 billion. That's the fiscal reality of this state. Last year, we spent 1 year, $9.8 million for state employees to take home cars. $9.8 million. And that doesn't even include gas. Right? Our spending is out of control, and everybody just wants to give favors to all these mucky mucks who don't deserve these lavish salaries. And I'm also, right, being a military leader, the first thing I'm doing is if I get elected, I'm cutting my salary in half, because leaders set the example. And I also am going to introduce a recall vote, and I said this months ago, so you guys have the power to vote me out if you think I'm full of crap. Vote me out. I'll go on and I'll just be a retired Army guy. And also, we look at the citizens election program. That needs to go away. And some people will go, oh, well, that's because special interests, are now going to take over. In the citizens election program, let's say, hypothetically, I was running unopposed, hypothetically. The state would give me money still for running unopposed. Does that make any sense? So I'll pass the mic on.
Lee.
In terms of getting to college, I haven't even said anything yet and you're hissing and booing me. Give me a break.
Students, please use your cards to express your opinions. Thank you.
So much of our problem in this state, I'll get back to what I was just going to say, is it's a popularity contest. The 300 at the top, we are 3 million people, and we have a judicial system where judges get a job for life. So much of what happens to you in the system, in the court system, is a popularity contest. It's the lawyer you pick. That's the platform of my campaign. I've spent 5 years stuck in legal quagmire. I'm obviously not popular. You've all made that abundantly clear. So let me ask you something. Maybe you're not a popular person too. Maybe he's popular, so every time he walks into the courtroom, the judges say, oh, Mr. Walker, anything you want. He gets the superstar lawyer who's also popular, anything they want. I walk into the courtroom, and it's not based about the law, it's about whether they like you or not, the color of your skin, whether you're tall or short, whether you're white collar or blue collar. The problem is, in this state, and why we're in the toilet, too many well-connected people at the top who never leave. You can't fire judges in Connecticut. You can't fire state employees. My Lee Bill #1 turns the Judicial Review Council into, instead of a useless organization that rubber stamps in every judge 8 years, no matter if they take your family's wealth, keep you from your kids, throw you in jail for something you didn't do, they still get rubber stamped in. Mr. Srinivasan did that recently. I spoke against 2 judges, and he rubber stamped in. So every judge gets a job for life. What's their incentive to not trash your life? It's not a secret that the state is in the toilet. It's all about influence peddling. You see it right here. Popularity and charm. When you get to the courtroom, it's still like that, and that's a problem. Now, I want to get back and answer the question about everybody's situation is individual. I don't know what your goals are in life. There are programs, there are grant programs, and there are also community college. I hate to tell you, but you're going to have to balance. I had student loans, and make a decision. Some of you will have to live at home and go to community college for the first 2 years until you go to a private 4-year or a public 4-year, just to save money. Go to summer school, take the intercession. You're going to have to fashion your own path. And you probably, many of you will have to work. And that's all I want to say about that.
Next question. Just recently, many states have begun to legalize recreational marijuana. That
Students,
includes,
to express your opinions, please use your cards. Thank you.
that includes Colorado, California, and even our neighbor, Massachusetts. Should Connecticut follow in their footsteps and legalize marijuana?
Students, please use your cards so that the candidates can actually answer the question. Thank you.
Micah.
So, for people who are 21 and over, I am pro marijuana. I also think that we need to take part of that funding and give law enforcement tools to combat it. So if you look right now, one of the issues that Colorado is having is, say somebody smokes pot, goes off, drives, gets a wreck, there's issues. So we have to take part of that funding and do it. If you want to smoke pot in the privacy of your house, go ahead and smoke pot. We also, as individual peoples, need to be responsible for our own actions. I don't need somebody going, getting high, driving into the road, and then killing one of you, or one of your family members, or loved ones. So we have to find a proper balancing act, and individuals also have to be responsible for their own actions.
Dave.
Medical marijuana is legal in the state, and the definition of medical uses is too narrow. That needs to be revised to conform with other states. Secondly, I have two primary concerns about legalizing marijuana, and people would have to, for recreational use, and people would have to provide me clear and compelling evidence of two things before I would consider it. Number one, is it a gateway drug or not? There's conflicting information. Number two, clear and compelling information. Number two, can we identify, as we can with alcohol, can we identify when somebody is driving under the influence with marijuana? Can we do that? I think that is very important. That's a public safety issue. Some people want to legalize marijuana for the revenue. Look, this state has a spending problem. They'll tax everything that moves, including marijuana. The fact is, we need to be serious about this and make sure that we consider the health and safety of our citizens.
Lee.
The gateway is the issue. I had a friend who recently died from heroin overdose. There was fentanyl in there. Back 20 years ago, when more than, oh my God, 40 years ago, I was in high school in the 70s. It was wild times. I used to say to him all the time, what is wrong with you? Why can't you just smoke a joint every now and then and have a beer and be like everybody else? Why? I was a teenager. Why do you have to do this other stuff? He was always doing the addictive stuff, the bad stuff. He died. During the time, there's another issue that people never talk about when you regulate marijuana. You know it's pure. It's grown from God's green earth. There was a little chapter there because I'll admit in the 70s when I was in high school, then there was a good 20 years when no, and then there was a time when I did try something and I said, whoa, this is very, very bad. This is not something from God's earth. This is treated with some sort of a chemical. One of the advantages to having it legalized is that the other junk, the bad junk, the stuff you don't want in your body, the stuff made from a laboratory in New Jersey, doesn't wind up in it. So that's a good thing. That having been said, I don't think you should smoke it. You know why? It burns out your brain cells.
Students, to express your opinions, please use your cards. Thank you.
All right, let me tell you why I don't do it at 57 years old. It burns out my brain cells, okay? I like to be alert. I'm fighting to stay alert. And don't get behind a wheel. And for God's sakes, don't smoke cigarettes. The worst thing I ever did was smoke a cigarette full of chemicals that they put in there to make you addicted. I can quit for 5 years. Be having a beer, pick up a cigarette, and I gotta fight again that addiction. Just like that. Don't take anything that is physically addicting. If they prescribed you an oxy at the emergency room or when you have surgery like I have, and what it does is it changes, maybe you might find pleasure in a cup of coffee in the morning, something, because I studied it when I went through my surgery. I'm like, what is it about this that so many people are addicted? Something that's pleasurable, being with my dog, drinking coffee, isn't pleasurable anymore. It robs you of something in your brain. Don't take anything that comes from a laboratory in New Jersey. If you need to kill pain, that's fine. You flush it down the toilet or put it in an appropriate place to get rid of it as soon as possible. If you want to have a party, drink a beer.
Prasad.
I am a physician, so I have a different take, a different perspective on marijuana. I'm a state representative, a state legislator. This is my 4th term. So in the last 7 years, this subject, marijuana, medicine marijuana for adults and then to pediatrics, and then recreational marijuana has been a subject that we have debated intensely in our committee meetings, on the floor of the House, floor of the Senate, and what has passed, as you know, in our state is medicinal marijuana, which is a role model for the entire nation. Other states are coming to our state, seeing how we have done this, how we have been able to give out the drug marijuana to the right person for the right reason in a controlled setting. So we need to do due diligence. We can't just jump in and say, you know, 5 states have it, our neighboring states have it, so you know what, we need to jump on the bandwagon as well. We have got to do our homework. We have got to do what is right. Will the time come? Will the time come in another decade maybe, or 2 decades, where we have done all due diligence? What is it that happens when you combine alcohol with marijuana? At what levels of marijuana are you a danger from a public safety point of view? What point can you have marijuana and go to work the next day? And you're working with machinery. And here you've had a joint, 2 joints, whatever, because it's legalized. What are the implications for you, for the business that you work in? All of that are critical issues. So has the time come? The answer is no. But will the time come? Maybe. But before that, we have got to do a lot of work, A, on the medical front, on the public safety, to make sure we don't jump into something and regret for that. And in terms, it was mentioned, there's a tax, revenue. Money will obviously come because we have legalized that. Let me just give you one example. We have the Tobacco Settlement Fund. Years and years and years, millions of dollars go into this Tobacco Settlement Fund. And the purpose was tobacco cessation, tobacco education. That's what the money is meant for. I'm ashamed to tell you that in our state, in the general fund, 1% of that money that is meant for tobacco cessation goes for that particular reason. So here you say, I'm going to get revenues from legalizing marijuana, and that's going to be used for the right reasons. Guess what? We need to wake up. That's not going to happen in our state. That is my concern. That is my worry. It may come in course of time, but we are not there yet.
Micah.
So earlier it was mentioned that we're a model for other states. Then why does it cost over $1 million for somebody to start a business in the marijuana industry? How many of you have $1 million to start a business? None of you, right? I don't have $1 million to start a business, so that sure as crap is not fair to anyone who wants to start a business. That goes into special interests and lobbying. They talked about earlier marijuana being a gateway drug. So I'll confess something to you, and you can Google it. My father, right, who was a former state employee, got addicted and was arrested for heroin in the 80s. Never once smoked pot. Never once. When I was all banged up in Afghanistan, when I came back here and I was laying at Walter Reed Hospital, I've been prescribed Oxy and everything. I don't have an addiction problem. I think part of the other mindset is that people need to have is the mind. You don't have to follow the label when it says, take every 6 hours for pain. Well, I'm in pain right now. I could take a Tylenol. People have to be better. You have to use your mind and your willpower. It's going to be your mind and your willpower that's going to set you apart as you go on in life. Right? How about the Bulldogs football team? Do you think you guys have mindset and willpower to go forth and to take on the next team? Do you? But that's what you need in life. You can beat things, conquer things.
So again, if you'd like to answer or respond, raise your hand. We'll call on you in the order that your hands are raised. Lee?
Life is really hard. There's going to be times somebody passes, somebody breaks up with you, you have a fight. Bad things happen to everyone. It's really, really hard. At some point, you may need something. The reason why people take drugs are, I think, one, recreational drug usage that goes out of control. Or two, they're dealing with something and they want to escape. Unfortunately, when you're looking to escape because you're young and you don't have any frame of reference of how your life is going to be and you've never been through this experience before, falling in love, picking a school, and believe me, it is hard being your age. It gets easier as you get older. Don't do anything to temporarily escape that affects your life in the future. You know, everything in moderation. You have a glass of wine. You know, I'm just going to have a glass of wine to take the edge off, to relax me a little bit. Don't drink the whole bottle. You know, have a beer, maybe two. Not a six-pack. You've got to take personal responsibility and never do heroin. Ever, ever.
More than 4 decades ago, several accidents prompted Connecticut to eliminate many of its tolls, most notably the incident where a tractor-trailer collided with 4 other cars in this very town of Connecticut, killing 7 people. Recently, however, some have argued for the revival of these tolls, citing the lucrative benefits they may offer. Do you think our state would benefit from the re-entrance of tolls? Dave.
I've had the good fortune to travel to all 8 continents, 100 countries, and all 50 states. Our infrastructure is terrible. 95 is a parking lot, the Merritt is a park, and getting around on 91 or 84 is not much better. Our infrastructure is a detriment to mobility, it's a detriment to economic growth, it's a detriment to quality of life. We have to do something with regard to our infrastructure.
What's that?
I support electronic tolls at the borders. You do not even have to slow down. And in order to impose the burden on out-of-state tags, since under the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution, you can't discriminate when they're at the border, we will give a credit to personal property taxes on your car for people who have a Connecticut plate. We need to improve our infrastructure, and it's going to cost money, and it's money that we don't have right now.
Prasad.
Tolls was another big discussion in this session. This session, as you know, from January through June is when the session is over. But this year, we are still in session because obviously we don't have a budget yet. So till we do our primary job of getting the budget, we are still in session. So in this session, we talk extensively about instituting tolls, knowing very well you got the pros and the cons. And the concerns we have, and that's why it's not moved forward, because there are a lot of unanswered questions. We can't jump in, do something, and then say, oh my God, we didn't check this. There's a lawsuit because of what you did. You discriminated between drivers who are outside the state. There's a lot of things involved. So is it possible down the line to have tolls, just like we talked about marijuana? Maybe. But is the time right? The answer is no, because we still do not know the legalities of saying, I'm going to put a toll on 95, but I'm not going to put a toll on 84. Guess what? Dr. Srinivasan lives on 84 and Route 2, so no tolls there. No, how could you do that? If you're going to put tolls, it cannot be at the borders. It has to be everywhere across. It has to be impacting all citizens. Route 2, which is my artery, which is my main line, has got to be tolled too if you're going to put it on your tolls down in Stratford. So a lot of work needs to be done as far as tolls are concerned, where they go and how it is going to be. And remember, even when we say yes to tolls, it's going to take years by the time the tolls are up and running. So we're not talking about something happening in 2018 or 19. And the last comment I want to make about tolls, once again, we've got to look back at our track record of our state, which is something we are not proud of at all, unfortunately, because we have a transportation fund. We did raise our taxes on the gas that we pay. We pay the highest taxes among neighboring states because that money was supposed to go into a transportation box. That money was to be used only for transportation-related issues. The roads, the bridges, the airports, that's what the money was meant for. Your parents and I and all of us here pay more taxes for that reason. Guess what? That money goes into the general fund, and out of the fund, it is not used for transportation purposes at all. So we have to realize that we've got to have certain boundaries. We've got to have rules. We've got to have systems in place before willy-nilly we start doing this, that, and the other, including tolls.
Micah.
So the real fact of the matter is federal law. So once Connecticut got rid of tolls, we got federal funding. So there's federal laws. So if we're going to just enact tolls everywhere across Connecticut, then we're going to lose federal funding to maintain our roads. So how much do you think those tolls are going to cost?
That's not true.
It is true, and it's under the Office of Legislative Research. So if you guys want to go on Google and go look up tolls under the Office of Legislative Research, it specifically says that. Now, there are some state-funded roads, but we would have to find out which one of those state-funded roads, and I believe the OLR, Office of Legislative Research, mentioned the Merritt Parkway.
Dave.
First, Hartford is out of touch and out of control. We are the only state in the union that doesn't have a budget. Many states around this country have done what I advocated. Do you have to get the federal government's approval? Yes. And the federal government has given approval to other states. Why does it take so long to do some basic research? Why does it take so long to pass a budget? Why are we raiding every trust fund and every rainy day fund we have, which mortgages your future every day? It's enough. I've had enough. I don't know about you.
If you were sitting in Dan Malloy's seat today, what would you do about our budget crisis? Dave.
I would force the parties to come together to do a bipartisan compromise that he will sign. Yes, a bill passed that was bipartisan, but he wouldn't sign it. So let's expeditiously get something that he will sign. But understand this, they are not treating the disease. 80% of the financial problem in this state is underfunded pensions and unfunded retiree health care costs. It is eating our lunch. The next governor and the next legislature must restructure that in a way that's fair and equitable. And if I'm the next governor, I guarantee you we will.
Prasad.
The budget crisis, the stalemate that we now have in our state, as you and all of us agree, unacceptable. Back when we instituted income tax, obviously most all of you were not even born at that time, that was the first time ever that we went into August before we had a budget. And now we are well past August into October with no budget, A, at this point in time, since the budget has been vetoed, and B, not much happening either. That's what the problem is. We were called into session last week. I spent the whole day, the whole Tuesday, away from my practice, away from what I'm doing, to be sitting there at the Capitol to vote on what was going to be our next budget. Spending there till 5 o'clock in the evening, we were told, guess what? Keep your calendars open for the next week and weeks to come, because that's when we need that we may be back. We have to communicate. We have to get the message loud and clear. No new taxes. That's the message we've heard, and that has got to be there in every budget. Every budget should make structural changes so that you are not going to be paying the debt that we talked about in billions of dollars that we own. So till we do those structural changes, till we make sure our financial house is in order with no taxes, that budget is going to be difficult, but it has to be done. It has got to be work that all the three parties, the Democrats, the Republicans, as well as the governor's office, need to get together. And it's high time, given the fact we are not in June anymore, we are in October.
Lee.
Spoken like a true politician. Again, back to the partisan politics. If you don't, anybody can make a budget. Hire a team of accountants, who cares about that? If you don't get to the root cause of why our state is in the toilet, you're doing nothing. We've got all these judges and judicial staff and state employees, you never get rid of them. The Judicial Review Council, Lee Bill number 1, gives an ability to fire bad judges, streamline the system. You go to a court, you're denied due process, you keep coming back because we believe in justice. Prolongation and the cost of that, because they're lining the pockets of the lawyers in the state. We have 220 lawyers at the Attorney General's office, and staff then, plus staff. That's millions and millions of dollars, because you're not even allowed to sue the state when a state employee screws you over. With my judicial review plan, we have the ability to fire, clean out all the fat. The state budget just gets worse and worse as cronies, good old boys, give all their friends jobs and then they never get out. Cars, like he was talking about, all the perks. No one ever leaves the coffers of the state of Connecticut. We need to change that. Read my 15 bills. My 15 bills will streamline the system, and please notice that there's very little question about the budget, because any accountant could do that. You've got to change the system and cut the fat out, and I'll do it.
Micah.
So I've already found over $100 million wasted away last fiscal year where our tax dollars have just been pissed away. It includes yacht clubs, limousine rides, all this stuff. Well, all these candidates have been going out fundraising, and just fundraising, and fundraising, and fundraising. I've been doing the digging, right? And that is probably just the tip of the iceberg in what I found. I was going to announce this week that I was going an independent, but a couple days ago I had to go to my treasurer's funeral. So in the next week or two, I will not have any party affiliation because I didn't fight for a party, right? And I didn't serve in the military for a party. I'd like to get both sides up on the table and actually tackle stuff. I'd like to see, right now, when they're having all these closed-door debates that none of you and I can't watch, how come they aren't putting it on Facebook Live? Why can't we see what's going on in the background? How is that fair to us? Oh, but they're going to sit there and tell you they're fighting for you, then be frickin' open about it. What are you fighting about? I want to see what you're really fighting for. And if I get elected, you guys will probably get sick of me going Facebook Live.
Since General Electric decided to move, Joe, did you want to answer?
I want to respond to the General Electric
ahead.
question. No, to the General Electric question.
General Electric decided to move its headquarters to Massachusetts. Many Connecticut residents have become worried that other corporations will soon follow. What would you do if elected governor to attract businesses and to prevent existing companies from leaving? Joe.
Thanks. Yeah, this has got to be one of the things we talk about that's going to tie the future of Connecticut. It's going to be jobs. When you come out of college or trade school or high school and you're looking for that opportunity to work, we've got to have jobs. I've said we've got to change the dynamic in Connecticut. We've got to recognize that when GE leaves, and especially they leave a suburban campus in Connecticut and go to an urban center, Boston in another state, and Aetna leaves a city in Connecticut, and now Alexion leaves New Haven, we've got to acknowledge, without even casting blame, by losing hundreds, maybe thousands of jobs, we're doing something wrong in Connecticut. Whether you're governor, whether you're a municipal leader like me, you've got to do things, you've got to be aggressive. One of the things we're doing is we're putting in a comprehensive plan to present in response to what's called an RFP for Amazon for their second headquarters, hopefully here in the Bridgeport, New Haven, in Connecticut. I don't know if people think that's a good idea or not. Do you think 50,000 jobs in Amazon when you come out of college would be a good thing for this area? I certainly think it would. So that's the type of thing that we need to focus on. In Bridgeport also, we've created an atmosphere where we brought in one of the top Fortune 500 companies in a group called Live Nation that basically controls all of the entertainment and acts and concerts, and they'll be coming to downtown Bridgeport. And now we've just had MGM propose a $750 million waterfront recreational hotel and casino for the city. So we're doing, or trying to set by example in Connecticut's largest city, things that the state can and should be doing, making it a better atmosphere. Lastly, before I go, I want to thank you for allowing me to participate and be here at Bunnell High School. And this morning I was up with a gentleman called Coach Ollie, or Kevin Ollie up at UConn. Anybody here a UConn fan? If you are, he gave me 4 tickets to present to Bunnell High School students for whoever can answer this trivia question. What year was Bridgeport incorporated? 1974. No, 74, come on. Anyone?
Google it.
Raise your hand. Thank you so much.
Ask him town or city. Ask him town or city. Which year?
City.
So time remaining is being shown. The 2 who are showing a red card, that means Ms. Whitnum is within her last 40 seconds. Mr. Micah is within his last 2 minutes. I don't see any other cards, so there's a little more time left for Prasad and Dave.
Dave.
I've met with the top executives of GE and Aetna and several other companies and asked them, why did you leave and what does it take in order to create a better future in Connecticut? There are several things. One, we are a business-unfriendly state. That has to change. We have overregulation. That has to change. Our finances are a mess, and top executives can read financial statements even though politicians obviously can't. Our infrastructure is a real problem, and we do not have vibrant cities. Millennials, empty nesters, and businesses want vibrant cities. We have to revitalize our cities. We have to put their finances in order. With regard to Bridgeport, I live in Bridgeport. For the last 8 years, my home value has gone down 35%. My property taxes have gone up 55%, and we haven't even started treating the problem yet. It's time that we be honest with people, help them understand what our problems are, provide them some hope, and show them a way forward to create a better future in the Constitution state. I'm committed to do so.
Micah, I just wanted, the timekeeper, how much time does everyone have?
How many more questions?
Just myself and her? Is everybody else out of time? Okay, I couldn't see the card.
You have time?
When he said.
You're out of time? Okay.
10 questions remain.
What costs paid by the state of Connecticut would you cut in order to normalize our state's budget? Dave.
There are several things you must do on the cost side. Connecticut state government has grown too big, promised too much, and needs to be restructured. It is a bloated bureaucracy. There are way too many entities, way too many layers, way too many players. We're not leveraging technology. We should be privatizing certain things and doing public-private partnerships for others. We need to reform our welfare system so that we're using not-for-profits more. They can do it for 1/2 to 1/3 the cost of state workers and do it better. We have to restructure our state employee compensation and benefit programs in order to make them competitive with Fortune 100 companies, which we can do, but much more affordable and sustainable and secure over time. We have to make tough decisions. None of those decisions are being made by Hartford right now. None of them. We need a governor, we need a state senate, and we need a state house that are committed to tell the truth, make tough choices, and create a better future in this state. It's your future. It's not my future, it's your future. And I'm fighting for my kids, for my grandkids, and future generations, because your future has been mortgaged, and that needs to cease.
Lee.
It's not enough to say what the problem is. I agree with him, everything he said there. But my 15 steps actually tell you how to fix it. Cleaning out the filth at the top, the biggest portion of what goes to the judiciary, state employees, and our correctional institutions. You clean up the judiciary, you clean up the filth at the top. Malloy cuts the libraries and schools for kids. That's not where the fat needs to be cut. You need to cut the filth off the top, the good old boys. You need to wipe them out, but there's no mechanism in place to do that. And that's what my 15 steps do, and they're really simple. I never tell you what I'm going to do unless I tell you how I'm going to do it.
Dave.
If you go to davewalkerct.com, you will find Dave's commitments to Connecticut, which includes 24 specific actions designed to increase economic growth and job opportunities, to restore integrity and accountability in government, and to put our finances in order. 24 specific items. Most politicians talk the talk, they don't walk the walk. It's time that we get serious, because the USS Connecticut is sinking. This is our last chance to save this great state. You need to be part of this. It's critically important. It is your future.
What is your position on gun ownership? And what would you do to either prevent another mass shooting, such as the one that occurred in Sandy Hook Elementary School, and most recently, Las Vegas, from happening again? Dave.
This is a very difficult issue. First, you need to understand there are two constitutional issues. Under the United States Constitution, you have something called the Second Amendment. It provides the right to bear arms, but it also has language that talks about a well-regulated militia, which made sense at the time because we didn't have a standing army at the time that it was that it was implemented, but now we do have a standing army, the strongest army on the face of the earth. But we also have to look at the Connecticut Constitution. Believe it or not, the Connecticut Constitution provides stronger gun rights than the U.S. Constitution does. It says you as an individual have the right to bear arms to defend yourself and your state. And it says nothing about a well-regulated militia. At the same time, that does not mean that you have the right to own whatever you want, as many as you want, and take it wherever you want. And as we found in Las Vegas, there are certain devices that we need to seriously look at banning that will allow somebody to take a semiotic weapon and make it an automatic weapon, which is illegal. We need to focus on the substance, not the form. This is a tough issue. I'm committed to look at it hard. Thank you.
Candidates, we have extra time, so each of you will be allotted an extra 90 seconds additional to what you still have. Thank you.
Micah.
I'm sorry, did you say
9 seconds?
Extra 90.
90, oh, okay.
To answer that question.
Just for any question in general. You have an extra 90 seconds added to your time.
Can you just give a closing remark or something for 90 seconds? Is that okay? Is that okay? That would be good for everybody. They can say what they want, if that's okay with y'all. Okay.
Micah.
So on gun ownership, I have a complete bipartisan plan. It's already been approved by a lot of Democrats and a lot of Republicans. And you can check it out on Micah4CT, the number 4CT.com. It's also out there on Facebook. If you guys watch the headlines, what happened today in Brazil? Anybody know? So this security guard decided he wanted to light up and burn a preschool with kids in it. 6 kids have died so far. On 9/11, they flew planes in. What we need to do is more money towards mental health. We need to actually find these sickos.
The current minimum wage in Connecticut is $10.10, one of the highest in the nation. However, many people still believe that this is not enough. What do you want to do with the current minimum wage?
I thought we were given a summary statement.
When everybody, the way I understand it is when everyone's out of their time, then we'll allow everyone to have 90 seconds to summarize.
Who's got time left?
Prasad, I believe. Timekeepers, who has time left?
I think we're all out.
I have time.
You add them and you have the 90.
I thought you were out before.
Add and have it.
Yes. Everybody's out.
Everybody has time because they added 90 seconds.
90 seconds are
90
added
seconds?
for
Okay.
each candidate to
They added 90
this
seconds.
period.
I have 1 minute and 35 according to my timekeeper.
You want to start now? Go ahead.
So can you just repeat that question real quick?
Minimum wage in Connecticut now is $10.10, one of the highest in the nation. However, many people still believe that it's not enough. What do you want to do with the current minimum wage?
So I polled small business owners and owners, and what I think needs to happen based on their response is for working parents, there should be an increase of 50, 75 cents an hour. Now, if we just increase the minimum wage, let's say we throw it to $15 an hour, what's going to happen to the price of milk? Because everybody gets a wage. It's going to go up. What's going to happen to bread? Everything's going to go up. Right? So we need to look at the consequences of our action. And we need to take those considerations. You got to be smart about how we do things. Yeah, it's nice. Would I love to, for everybody to be making $20 an hour? Sure, that'd be great. But what happens to the price of everything else?
Prasad.
Minimum wage. I think my mic is turned off because my time is over. Can we turn it back on? Is that? It's on now. Good, thank you. Minimum wage. It really is a training wage. You've got to realize what is the minimum wage. That was the intent. That you go out there, you're being trained. And while you're training as an intern, as in any place, you obviously need to make some kind of money. And that's what a minimum wage is about. Whereas we are now taking this training wage into a minimum wage, which is two different things. With minimum wage, with training wage, you cannot put food on the table and clothes on the back of the children. It's not enough. And as you said, if you raise it to 20, why not 25? You can just imagine the impact it is going to have by constantly changing that wage. I'm in private practice. I know what I need to pay my staff. I know what I need to pay my receptionist, what I need to pay my nurse. So they come back to me year after year, they work for me, and it's not a revolving door. I really don't think government should be in the business of telling us, small business owners, I'm a small business owner, what is the right wage and what's the wrong wage. Let us do what we need to do. We know best how to run our businesses. Government has a place, and this is not the place for them.
Students, could you please quiet down so that we may continue the debate? Thank you.
And it is not for us to regulate that. Thank you. Thank you.
You just dropped the bomb, literally.
Candidates, at this time, we are wondering, would you like to move to the closing statements, or if you still have time left, would you like to answer some questions still?
Do I have time?
So for those of you who have time.
Closing.
Closer?
Closing.
Whatever order, I'm okay.
Ms. Whitnum, closer or questions?
What?
We're just going around. Quick.
Closing.
Closer.
Okay.
Closer.
So I still have time. I still have 40 seconds.
Do you want to answer another question then?
Sure.
In the past year, police community relations in some areas have been especially tense. If elected as governor, what would you do to improve these relations, and would you make any specific refinements to the existing police force?
So what I think is, I think communities and police need to start working together. And what I also think, I think people need to understand that the legislature, and I did a police ride-along, and I looked at the Connecticut state laws. One book, just one book, was over 1,700 pages with laws that politicians enacted, that those officers are sworn to uphold. Did you guys know that? I mean, these politicians are passing laws like it's going out of style. So I think we need to develop partnerships between the communities and law enforcement, and just not just point fingers at either side, right?
Candidates, you may start with your closing remarks. Dr. Srinivasan?
I want to thank Bunnell School for hosting this wonderful event and an opportunity for me to come down here to Stratford and share my thoughts, my vision with you for a brighter and a better Connecticut. We need to revive Connecticut. We need to make it prosperous again. And we can, and we can. In 1980, when I finished my fellowship in allergy and immunology, I chose to come to Connecticut. There was no reason for me to come to Connecticut. I was not born here. I was not raised here. I had no family here. Remember, I'm the first generation immigrant to come to this country. I chose because Connecticut is a place where you can raise a family, have a great quality of life, and hopefully a successful practice as well. All of that has happened to me and my family, 1980 to now. But fast forward 2015, 16, 17, I'm concerned, deeply concerned of what is happening to our state. And the reason that we need to work together to revive our state and make it prosperous again is for you and for your kids and your grandkids. Our darkest days are right now. But guess what? It is always darkest before dawn. And with economic revitalization, with economy in the right place, steering the ship in the right direction, Connecticut will be great once again. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Walker.
Thank you for the opportunity to come back to high school. It's been a few years since I've been in high school. Good luck to the Bulldogs. I had the good fortune of going to high school in Coral Gables, Florida. We were state and national champions in football all 3 years that I was in high school. So good luck to you. Secondly, there are 3 reasons why I'm the best candidate for governor. Whether you be a Republican, a Democrat, or unaffiliated. And keep in mind that 42% of the voters in this state are unaffiliated and growing. Number 1, I am the only candidate that has proven experience making major change happen and restructuring the finances of major complex governmental entities. The only one. This is not an amateur's job. We're sinking. You need the best captain you can get, and you need a solid crew in order to save the ship of state. Number 2, I'm a Reagan presidential appointee. Bush 41 and Clinton confirmed unanimously 3 times by the United States Senate, twice when the Democrats controlled it, and once when the Republicans. I have good relations on both sides of the aisle in Washington that we need for transportation reform, including tolls at the borders, for welfare reform, for health care reform, for education reform. We don't have it now. We need it desperately. And number 3, while I think it's important who your governor is, I'm also talking team. You need to have a controller, a treasurer, a Senate, and a House that will support the governor, whomever that is, make the tough choices to create a better future for you and for others. Thank you.
Ms. Whitnum.
I'm coming from a very different perspective. For 5 years, I fought legal quagmire in the court system. I was dragged into I went from 0 to 53, a Greenwich housewife without even a speeding ticket. Suddenly, I found myself in the crosshairs of the Connecticut statewide prosecutor's office. I was dragged into criminal court for 41 criminal court appearances. I was facing 16 years in jail for crimes I did not commit. Why? I'm unpopular. There's nobody to complain to. From the statewide prosecutor's office on to the governor, there's no enforcement. We no longer have a 24-member grand jury in this state. We're the only state that doesn't have a grand jury. So the statewide prosecutor's office, I was put in shackles. I was treated unbelievably. They destroyed my life. I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. Where you meet your government is in the court system, and it's filthy. My simple common sense rule, such as there's already a motion for articulation on the record. What it says is, Your Honor, that was an unlawful ruling. Can you please provide why you just did that? And I've done that so many times because I've been the victim of inexplicable rulings. And I've had them deny it, no, with no explanation. One of the new directives as your governor, if a judge refuses to give you an explanation grounded in law, then they're making their decision based on prejudice. That's ground 1, strike 1 for impeachment. What happens then, by one sentence into that existing statute, all those deals made on the golf course, like I had powerful enemies. I'm not pro-Israel, I have powerful enemies. All those deals made on the golf course, you know, a shake a hand, hey, Bill, when that Whitnum girl comes up here in the Atria Corporation case, make sure you don't throw it her way. Make sure you don't hear a motion to dismiss even though she can prove she's innocent. That would evaporate overnight because then the judge would say, I can't do that because now we have a method to fire me. And if she asks for articulation, a motion for articulation, a motion for clarification, I've got to give her a reason grounded in law. I was a human punching bag by the judiciary. My life made a laughing stock. I was kept from my husband and I was railroaded.
10 seconds.
into divorce and almost into jail. I come from a very different perspective. He's the top dog. He's the kind of guy we've been electing for 300 years. I'm the aggrieved woman, the powerless one. Sometimes you really want to get something done, you got to do your part to vote for somebody who's different.
Ms. Whitnum, we need to move on.
Thank
you. Mr. Welintukonis. Students, please keep the talking down. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
30 seconds, Mr. Welintukonis.
Have a good weekend, Bulldogs.
Thank you, Mr. Welintukonis.
Thank you all, candidates, students, and I know Dr. Dowling has a special thank you coming up. I just want to say how you make a real difference. I think you know who votes the most. Old people. Who votes the least? 18 through 21. Most of you will be 18 before the convention. Many of you will be 18 before November 7th of next year. You should be registering and do your part. You've all done a good part here. Let me turn it over to Dr. Dowling.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much to the seniors. Hey, guys, sit down, please. We're not done. Okay, please sit down in the back. What I'd like to do is first, obviously, thank all of you, the students at Bunnell High School. Thank you for making our school so proud today. You were listening, you were invested in the process, you were giving feedback, and I am very, very proud of you in terms of your maturity and your thought processes. Again, very, very proud. This November, next month we have elections here in Stratford. If you are 18, and you're not registered to vote, let us help you become actively engaged in the local process. But next year, these are our candidates, November of 2018. Again, Bunnell High School will help you get registered to vote. Be a part of the process. Be a part of the solution. Shh. Now, I've asked the students to come up, and we really need, and we owe them a tremendous round of applause. This event today began back in July in a meeting that I had over at Eli Whitney School, and I think Phil and George and Nate and Kenny, was Kenny there too? So the four of them came together with me in the middle of July, and I said, what do you think about this opportunity? They said, let's do it. And due entirely to their leadership, this happened today. So thank you. To give them personal recognition, Liana Wagner, Bruce Claxton, Ken Shimaluski, Mike Quinn, Phil Bloom, and Amanda is the Uber timer. Nicely done, timers. They were up here in front, keeping track and giving signals. And of course, the moderators we had, George Bloom, Nate Larson, and Kyle Sullivan. And I'm not sure that we properly introduced Mr. Scott McDonald from Channel 8 News. You see him on TV. And again, Mr. Miller, if you could bring up the house lights. We have an audio-visual team here. Chris Brown, Who else do I have? Is it Charles? Carl Luli's in the back. Donka Halinka and Olivia Namoli in the back with Mrs. Peterson. Mrs. Peterson, Mr. Miller, we couldn't have done it without you. Mark Greenstein is the man behind the curtain. He's the man, the brainstorm here. And very quickly, we had guests here for today from the school in upstate Connecticut, the Gunnery. They are hosting the same forum next Friday. Could you please stand and be acknowledged? Our school colleagues from the Gunnery. And if I can ask my students from Bunnell to part the waves, again, a huge, can I see the candidates? I just want to see the candidates. On behalf of Bunnell High School, it has been our privilege to host you today. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your commitment to our future. It has been an absolute pleasure today. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Bunnell High School. What time is it, seniors? Time to go. See ya.